When you were talking about how, like, lack of money kind of fucks up poor people as well, that was one I...
Lack of money fucks up poor people. Breaking news!
I know.
Do you have a tagline?
I don't.
Damn.
I was starting to think of one, but then I was like, I feel like I've winged it the past couple times, so I was going to leave it to you.
Okay. Well, hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
And welcome to Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast, where Lauren has been on more episodes than she hasn't, but she still can't come up with taglines.
That's good enough.
I obviously can't come up with taglines either.
And I like that you noted the more episodes than not.
Yeah, we kind of breezed by it, but Lauren has been the co-host longer than I was doing the podcast alone, which is insane.
Yeah. And I've been listening to a lot of old episodes lately, so...
Yeah. Okay, we need to stay focused.
Okay.
Lauren, where are you at? Let's just get right into it.
Okay. Much like last week, I just wrote down two things. More than 2 words, but not much.
All right, getting better.
One of them I wanted to talk about was the Ariel stuff. That's what I wrote, Ariel stuff. Because...
Wait, I need to close the door. I just noticed it's wide open.
Okay.
Hold on. It wasn't the cats, it was me. Okay.
Yeah, so I had my new class in the next level session for the first time last night. It was kind of rough, and I didn't leave feeling great, but I also didn't leave feeling terrible. Like, it felt like this is workable, but in some ways it was kind of hard. I mean, for one thing, you know, it is the next level, and people do like repeat these levels a lot, and it became clear that everybody else in that class had, you know, been in this level or been at a similar spot previously. So, you know, it's kind of hard to go from knowing like I'm probably the best one in my class to I am definitely the worst one in my class.
Oh, yeah. I can relate a lot to that.
Yeah. I do feel like, well, I clearly was the worst one, and there's things that everyone else is like, oh, yeah, you know, you need us to do this as just like a conditioning exercise? Got it. And I'm like, I can't even do it. Some of the things, you know, it felt like maybe I couldn't get all the way in like the move she was asking us to do, but, you know, she showed me some things, the instructor, I mean, and I practiced a couple times and was like, oh, you know, I got like the first step of it. So it's like I could see progress happening. So, you know, it wasn't totally discouraging or anything like that.
Even though you weren't like a pro overnight.
I know. Can you believe that she didn't just, you know, like show me something for the first time once and I was like, got it, I'm perfect at it.
I mean, you're supposed to be perfect at it instantly.
I think one of the old episodes I listened to, we talked about that, like wanting to give up when we're not immediately great at something.
God, I just want to hear now which episode you showed the bassist.
Well, I haven't shown him any of them. Spoiler alert.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry. I'm just going to stop interrupting you.
I still haven't decided on one is why, and I can get to some thoughts on what I've been thinking, listening to some possibilities later.
Lauren.
One of them is I realized I was listening to some old ones, you know, based on like subject matter, thinking that would probably be a good one. But I realized after listening to a few, I was like, I don't know if the best one to show him is one where we like do a poll. Because I'm trying to let him in on stuff about me, and we're talking about other people the whole time.
But I think to some extent it won't matter which one you show him, because once he knows what the podcast is, he can just look up and listen to anyone he wants.
I know, but I'm going to tell him not to do that. I mean, not that people won't anyways.
Oh my God. I don't even know what to say.
The other big thing I realized why I like outlawed some of the ones that seemed like they would be obvious, you know, because it was mainly like wanting to broach the eating disorder topic, is I'm prepared to share that, but I'm not prepared to share one where I talk about the laxative abuse. Ooh. At least, especially not in front of him with him listening to it. I'm like, I'm not ready for you to hear about all my poop.
Yeah, I mean...
Literally.
Wait, he would be listening to it, like, in front of you?
Well, that was my thought.
Really?
So we could talk about it afterwards.
Oh, I thought like you were going to send it to him to listen on his own time and then you could talk about it afterwards.
No.
Oh my God, that would make me so fucking anxious.
See why this is hard?
Couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Oh my God. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
Damn.
But so the other thing that I wrote down is this damn shirt.
Okay.
And that is referring to a top that I was wearing today. So my mom randomly bought me a bunch of clothes for Christmas. And that's like not something she's really done since I've been in high school. So that was kind of weird. And I do feel like she maybe doubled a lot of things that she was buying for my niece. So
wait, she gave you the same clothes as your niece?
Yeah, because most of them were just things, like, those sort of, I don't know, are they like nylon, sort of like runners wear them?
I don't wear athletic clothes.
Well, I don't really either. That's why I said I think she just bought me stuff my niece wanted. But yeah, so it's not something that I'd really wear, but it did seem like I wasn't disappointed when I got it because I just thought like, oh, that's actually probably a good thing like that I could wear to aerial classes. Like that'd be good for a warm up. So I could find a use for it. That's fine. And so I put it on today for the first time while I was working from home. And the thing is she bought a certain size. And in this top, it is clearly 2 sizes too big for me.
Okay.
And in any other clothes, that would be at least 1 size too big for me. Like, I would never buy this size. But as I was just kind of like, oh, well, this thing also looks like a tent, so it's not even like attractive. I don't really like it that much. Then it got my head thinking, and I was like, I don't think my mom would ever buy me smaller than that size. And that just kind of frustrated me.
Okay, there's so much to unpack here. First of all, you're talking to someone who wears all oversized clothes all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought of that too. I was like, I guess maybe in some things I would get, like that size or bigger, but that's like something specifically like I want this to look oversized.
Well, yeah, like if it was a sports bra, I wouldn't want it oversized.
Yeah, like this is a thing that's supposed to, like not be skin tight, but to fit you.
That brings us to the main thing, which is how you feel about your mom thinking you're bigger than you are.
Yeah, because this has been all my life. And so that's what I think is it was, it's like not just this particular instance, but it was just me thinking of like the years and years and years. Like even when I was younger and, like might ask for a certain item for Christmas, I would ask for a size that I wanted and she would insist like, no, that's going to be too small. And she'd get the next big one.
Your mom is basically like body dysmorphia incarnate.
Uh-huh.
Is that what incarnate means? Like in the flesh?
Yes.
Or is it the opposite? Okay.
No, I think you're right.
I should know this, being a pastor's child.
Right?
That's really complicated. Like,
yeah, it's not something that I spend as much time like concerning myself with as I might have like when I was a teenager, but just kind of like realizing, oh, that is still going on. That's never going to change. It's actually kind of frustrating.
I mean, I don't think she's doing it like getting the wrong size on purpose. The alternative would be she legit thinks of you as that size that you're not, which means she has like body dysmorphia about you.
True, and that would go with my childhood and the messages she told me.
Now, does she herself have like any type of body insecurities that you've talked about or noticed?
Somewhat. Like she's always been like very, very small, and for most of her life, I always heard her, doing the kind of like humble brag thing about it, where it's like she pretends like it's an issue, but it's just like, oh, I'm just so tiny that I can't even get this to fit. Sucks to be me.
Yeah.
But, it's like literally it took her until she was like 60 before she finally like gained some weight as, like women in their 30s, 40s, or 50s might. So I don't know if it's because it took that long and she wasn't expecting it to ever happen, but she does, like make comments a lot of times about having gained weight. And I'm just kind of like, it kind of makes you like the larger end of small. You're like, you are not big.
Yeah, it's all relative. Like people are built differently. Some people are naturally smaller, just like some people are naturally bigger. Like I need to sometimes remind myself that like not everyone who is thin has an eating disorder.
Right.
Or not everyone who's larger has an eating disorder either, you know? Like,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Like, that is actually how I come at it with my mom, because she was, like naturally really, really tiny, especially, in her younger years, like when she was in high school.
Yeah.
And so I think I projected a lot of stuff on her, maybe because she sent a lot of messages to me, but I don't know that she actually had issues with herself.
I also think like when we use words like tiny or like larger, it just implies that there is a standard that everyone should be, and anything outside of that is like there has an eating disorder.
Yeah.
You know? For me, it's more about behaviors.
Yeah, like once you said that, then that made me realize, like, I do say like my mom is tiny a lot, but I have noticed that if I'm telling other people, then I usually try and clarify that as like she's 5'1" and the tall person in her family. I'm not talking about weight. I'm saying like they're tiny people.
Yeah, that makes sense. My mom is super tiny in both senses of the word. She was just like running around after 7 kids for all of her 30s and 40s. Honestly, her 50s too.
Yeah.
TBH. I really like that idea of just writing down 2 things to talk about in where you're at. So I've copied you.
Okay, cool. So what do you have to say? Where are you at?
What do you have to say? Well,
by the way, we did a lot of that in early episodes, just being like, yeah, talk to me, bitch.
Oh, that's funny. So this week I had my first hotline call today.
Mm-hmm.
And it went great. I can't really give out details, obviously, but it was someone who like called regularly, and so they were really patient with me. And we talked about cats.
Aw.
Yeah. So that felt good because all week long, ever since last Friday when I passed my practice call a week ago today, I've been just full of dread, which doesn't make sense because like I want this job. I love this organization. Like I've been trained. I am choosing this job, and the thought of doing the job is filling me with so much anxiety. Like I'm sweating from my palms and my feet and like
Yeah, I mean, I thought it made perfect sense actually when you said it. Like that was my first thought. It's like, great, and now the first one's over. And I think I was thinking of it as like, if your first call was terrible, then all you have after that first call is, I feel like I've done a bad job 100% of the time. So now, like, even if you get one that feels bad, then you automatically have one to look back at and be like, I did well. That went okay.
See, I was thinking about how much better it could have been.
Oh,
and
of course
I'm like,
you did.
well, at least, now I know better for next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that does tie into something we've talked about before, which is like the fear of the unknown and having to have control of the situation. Like, because I hadn't experienced it yet, I was just like literally sick with dread all week. And I would much rather just like jump in and get it over with anything in life, really. Because if I delay it, I just don't do it.
That's absolutely how I would have felt in your situation. So I totally understood where you said, like, I'm just glad that it happened. It's over. Yeah,
listeners, do you prefer to like get scary things done first, or do you like to build
just
up to it?
Just want to plan and plan and plan.
Yeah, ugh. I'm curious. The second thing that I wrote down is OCD.
Mm-hmm.
My therapist thinks I have it.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly like never considered that in my whole life. And so I'm kind of obviously like, okay, we were talking about my like obsessive thoughts about my body and using substances to, stop that train of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like I was repeating myself because every single week I go in there and I'm like, I just can't stop worrying. Like I can't stop these anxieties in my head. It's like I have this voice constantly talking to me. It's my own voice, but it's like, it never shuts up. And she was like, have you ever considered you might have OCD? And I was like, no, not really. And she had me take the Yale Brown obsessive compulsive scale. You like answer a bunch of questions and then they give you a score. And so I got 30 out of 40, which is severe.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't know how to feel about that. It's not like official or anything. Obviously, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I don't know. Just thinking back to childhood and to even recent events, like through the lens of OCD, I gotta say, like, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I don't really know, like, where to go from there. In a way, it makes me feel even more sad. Like, when she told me the score and I was kind of hesitant to respond, she was like, "What's the hesitation?" And I was like, I don't want to just, like, throw on another label because, like,
Yeah.
this is kind of how I felt when I got diagnosed with ADHD at 31. Like, I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, finally everything will make sense and I can get medicated and, like, I'll be able to function. And, like, I'm better at functioning, but it's just a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. I mean, I had kind of a couple feelings because I did see you say that you had taken that test. So, I knew that was a thing that had happened. And I mean, on the one side, I kind of felt a lot like you do. It made me think of, like, oh, yeah, it's probably does feel discouraging to be like, well, here's another thing, that I have to deal with. And
another thing that I can feel imposter syndrome about.
Right. But on the other hand, and this isn't just that, it's kind of like everybody that I see, like I've seen frequently, people, react much worse than that to, like, getting a diagnosis of something. And it always makes me feel like, at least in the mental health capacity, that it's like, but you're the same person that you were yesterday, the same person before you heard this. Like, that's not going to change who you are. You don't have to suddenly, like, act more OCD because it's been made official or anything like that. It's like, you could have had it and never known, but you still would have been the same person.
Yeah, and the fact that I do know, the fact that I'm looking into this means hopefully it'll make more sense. I don't know. You're right.
And it did make me think this the same way as you were talking. I was like, oh yeah, that does kind of sound like the first time someone suggested to me, like, have you ever been diagnosed ADHD? And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's really throwing me off guard.
So I get like where it kind of surprises you and it's like someone threw a ball at your head or something. You're like, that wasn't one I considered. I knew the ways I was fucked up.
I mean, yeah, seriously, it's almost freaking me out, kind of, like, especially since I went to the OCD subreddit and I found a lot of the stuff relatable and I was like, God damn it. Anyway, that's where I'm at.
Okay.
What are we talking about today, Lauren?
So I told Christina earlier, I kind of had like a plan that I was working on. And then, of course, at the last second, then I just totally changed it. And I was like, you know what? We're going to talk about something else. But I am very excited about this one because I feel like this is something we've talked about before and we've teased multiple times saying we should do a full episode on this. We are going to talk about finances.
Oh, fuck yeah. Oh my God. Janai said they could be a guest on an episode where we talk about finances.
Oh, hopefully they can soon. That'd be a great follow-up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe during the pickle poll episode they can.
Yes.
Ooh. Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, I can cut that out. My first reaction is, like, fear. Because finances scare me.
Yeah.
Should we talk about, like, our financial background or, like, what we were taught about finances growing up? Or, like, do you have a plan?
I don't have much of a structured plan because, again, I changed at the last second. I have a couple things that I want to hit, but yeah, maybe, like, talk about how money was viewed growing up and how we view it now, maybe.
Ooh, okay. Let me think about this for a second. Growing up, I didn't think about money a lot when I was little. But by the time I was 9 or 10, I want to say, I was kind of aware that money was an issue, like a capital I issue in our house.
Yeah.
Like, we always shopped at thrift stores and we went to the commissary, and because my dad was in the military. And, like, those are the only stores we went to. And I didn't know any different. And I loved going to those stores. And then, once I started meeting other people, like, in different life circumstances than me and seeing their houses, I was like, oh, this is not what I'm used to. My parents would fight about money growing up. Like, I know they were in a lot of credit card debt, and it was a huge stressor in our family when I was a teen. And after I left the house, it would get worse. But what was the question?
Oh, like, how do you view it now?
Oh, well, so, yeah, because money was never really solid growing up, like, it wasn't predictable, and it was a source of contention. I think as an adult, I've kind of handled money with, like, tongs. Like, I'm a little more educated, I think. I had a lot of blunders growing up. Like, I listened to some bad advice and I got myself into debt. And I think by now in my 30s, I kind of know what to avoid. Like, I have an excellent credit score and I have like income, but it hasn't always been like that. And I never trust it. Like, when I have
Yes.
money, it doesn't feel like I do. And I don't really, over the years, I budgeted some, but like, I don't budget. I don't have any savings right now. I'm kind of just like pretending money doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, not a big surprise. I noticed a lot of similarities while you were talking. I do feel like how I grew up was different because it's only later that I learned, like in my early years, like maybe 0 through like 8 or 9, we were poor, poor. But I feel like my parents, my mom especially, always did their best to hide that. So I think that's why I never knew growing up because, like they would find like the most creative ways to make,
Yes.
yeah, just like the tiniest bit stretch. And so I just assumed like, well, I've got everything I need. I mean, I sleep in a bed, I have clothes, so we
Yeah.
can't be poor.
I think like it takes a lot of ingenuity to be poor. Like,
Yeah.
especially if you have kids. Like, my mom was so innovative in that area and still is, even though they have money now. Like, she still stretches things out as far as it can go. And I have a lot of respect for that.
And I feel like my parents, again, probably my mom especially, were like very, very proud. So, they would have rather just gone without and found some way, even if they had to rely on like family or something like that. So I don't think we really had, like credit card debt or anything like that. I mean, obviously, I'm sure we were paying off like home loans and things that were probably really tough.
And this would have been like in the 80s and 90s, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like when I became aware of it is probably similar to you, maybe a little later, because I feel like maybe like junior high, going into high school, then I realized, and at that point, like we had worked our way up. So it's like we were probably lower middle class.
Okay.
But, I started to recognize then that it's like, oh, I want to take dance classes, and all of my friends take 3 or 4, and my mom said, you have to choose one.
Ooh, yeah, that was another thing. Oh, you know what? My first memory of like not having enough money for something. This story is going to make me sound like a spoiled brat, but I was obsessed with horses. Like, obsessed growing up. I read the Saddle Club series. Did you ever read those? Oh my God.
I mean, I read fucking everything, but yes.
Yeah, I read all the horse series I could get my hands on. I got the horse PC games.
I wasn't as into horses, but I have to admit there were a lot of good like kid horse series at that time. So yes, I read a lot as well.
There was a horse board game called Herd Your Horses.
Oh my God.
Anyone? But obviously, like, I had never ridden a horse because I couldn't afford it. It's expensive.
Yeah.
And so for one of my birthdays, I think it might have been my 9th birthday or maybe my 8th birthday, they got me a single horseback riding lesson.
Oh.
And maybe I'll post the picture to Instagram. It was the best day of my life.
Oh, that's so cute.
But yeah, who the fuck like gets to ride horses though?
Rich people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I didn't even like think of it until you said it. You're like, I don't really budget now. And I was like, yeah, I don't either. And I think it's the same thing. It's like I'm very careful with my money, but I don't count on it being there, like you said. So I'm like, there's no reason to budget. It's just more like you make happen what you have to make happen, or you don't spend anything extra ever. So of course I have what I need for my bills because I never spend anything.
Yeah, I feel like I swing, like I do have my moments where I'm reckless with money, and surprise, surprise, it's tied to my mental illnesses. That's a whole segment of this episode. But...
Oh, it is. That's one thing I've already planned.
Okay, good. But yeah, when I'm not on a path of self-destruction, I'm very, very careful with my money, and I don't typically buy quote unquote frivolous things.
Yeah. Right now, I'm probably, at least as far as having, like a savings and the salary I'm pulling in, I'm like literally probably the best off I've ever been in my entire life. But I realize things like, so, side note, I probably mentioned this before because it annoys me to no end. Missouri is a state that makes you pay property tax on your fucking car. And I think it's usually like just due at a certain point, but because I've been leasing cars,
Oh,
then
wait. Virginia does that too.
okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I knew more states than us do, but it's the first one I've lived in that does that. But yeah, so I guess when you're leasing a car, basically they figure out the property tax and they say, you know, like at the beginning of the year, you have to pay this, but you can pay it any time during the year. And you can pay part of it, you can pay all of it, you have an entire year to pay it.
Okay.
So I've got it. I've got the property tax bill. I can pay it just fine. It's not going to hurt me, but I think because it's a big chunk of money, I'm putting it off because I'm so used to, feeling like, oh, there's no way I could part with that much money at once. That will leave me like destitute and unable to afford my home.
Oh my God. Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. Like when we got the stimulus check, at first I was really, really scared to use it because I was like, well, that's a bad example because I ended up spending it all on stupid shit. But like when I've been on unemployment, for instance, I know I have money coming in, but I'm not doing anything and it feels too good to be true and it doesn't feel real.
Oh yeah, like whatever it's been now, like a year and a half at least since I was last in treatment. And then I was actually enrolled in some programs at work where I got some disability from work.
Oh, nice.
While I was there. And it's something, I don't remember, it's like 2/3 or 70% of your salary. So, you know, it's less than you'd normally make, but I mean, I'm just making money while I'm not there.
Amazing.
Yeah, but still, like, it is considerably less, but that's what I think because of that, you know, I felt like so scared because I wasn't like doing anything to make money that I just feel like, okay, so I am the only person probably who added significantly to their savings while making 67% of their salary.
Damn, flex on the pod. Why don't you?
But it was just because I am only going to spend on necessities. And also I don't have, you know, the medical bills that are going to come when I leave yet.
Well, and we haven't mentioned this yet on this episode about money, but you are an accountant.
Yeah.
And so I bet that, I don't know, does it make things more complicated or do you feel like you're better at handling money because you're an accountant?
I definitely don't feel like I'm better because of it.
Okay.
I can see where it might cause more stress because, you know, my brain, as we've established on previous episodes, does think in numbers and percents and things like that all the time. So I think when I am concerned about money, then yeah, it's just ever present. My brain is adding up things all the time. Like, is this going to be okay? Is this going to work?
See, I kind of live in a fantasy world where I'm able to tell myself that if I don't see it, it doesn't exist.
I've held myself back like a few times where you've like when you commented saying like, oh, sometimes I will spend beyond my means instead of, you know, do the opposite. I've held back and that this time I'm not going to. I wanted to say how very bulimic of you.
Oh, okay, that's true. But also I was thinking of vapes.
Oh.
As we speak, my vape is about to die and I'm thinking of like when to leave the house to get there by the time they close and like how much it'll cost. And that's the thing.
That's a thing that both of us kind of know. Like, I'd also be better off if I just didn't buy one.
Okay, this is how deluded I am. I've not taken my cats to the vet in a while. Fang has not been since I moved to Virginia because he's healthy.
Yeah.
And my excuse is I don't have the money. But I spend so much money on like weed and vapes and things that I don't even need that aren't helping me / might even be harming me. And I have a lot of shame about that. And I think this can start a conversation about like money is so like moralized.
Yeah.
In this country in particular where capitalism is king.
This is a good conversation.
Like, I think the main emotion that I feel when I think about money and my history with money is shame. Either shame for not having money or shame for looking like I don't have money or shame for spending money on the wrong things.
Yes.
Quote unquote wrong things.
Yes.
Which, dang. Oh my God, he's gotten into my bike bag. Oh no, that's my jacket.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, because so I'll say at the top what I think now, which is that you should spend your money however you want because you might die tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you should be happy. And everything could collapse tomorrow, even if you don't die. You just never know what's going to happen. And the last couple of years have really shown me that. Also, take care of your basic needs
Yeah.
first. But I don't take money as seriously as I used to. And I think that is, first of all, a sign of privilege that I can.
Yeah.
It's also a coping mechanism because I think things have been worse than I am willing to admit. And I'm just like, I don't know. Ignore it.
Yes. I mean, first of all, I just wanted to say maybe unpopular opinion, but I would say, like, don't shame yourself about not taking your cats to the vet because, I mean, I didn't take my first cat, Gypsy, to the vet past when he was 2 years old, and I had him till he was like 9 or 10. But the same reason, because he was healthy. If he had a problem, I would have taken him immediately.
Yeah. Ruby's been a couple times since I've moved here.
But I also remember a few issues she's had, so that makes sense. And that proves that, yes, like, if your babies were sick, you would not be like, well, yeah, but I really want a new vape.
You overestimate my humanity. But yeah, I think it's interesting how you're treated is like, people do treat you differently when you have money.
But yeah.
Or when you don't have money.
I was going to say, yeah, that was the other thing is I get feeling like, almost like, especially, yeah, if other people know that you're not very well off, then I almost feel like if I spend anything on myself and they see, like, are they judging me? Like, why is she doing that when she says she's struggling for money?
No, literally. Oh my God. So yeah, this year I've been so broke and I've had people like send me money here and there to help me out, which I really, really appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, like I'll spend a portion of that on a vape, which, when it's other people's money that you're spending, there's extra pressure to only spend it on quote unquote good things.
Yes.
And you know what? It's kind of like, it's very puritanical.
Yeah.
It definitely reminds me of like being in church and being told to tithe 10% no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've always tithed growing up.
Okay. I've heard that word and I didn't know exactly what it meant. I'm assuming that just means like give to the church.
Yeah, they pass around an offering plate like midway through the service.
Okay. We did do that. I just didn't know that's really what that word meant.
Oh yeah, tithing is when you give, or traditionally 10% to the Lord.
Yeah, us too.
Us too. The Catholics.
The Catholics said the same thing. We want your 10%.
We got Catholics represented. We got Protestants represented.
Everyone thinks God needs 10%.
Oh.
So I did have something, and it's something that I've brought up before. The number apparently has changed a bit, but there was a new thing I learned, and I was curious what you think of it. Because I know I've mentioned the studies before that say, like money actually can buy happiness. And one I found before said they found the upper limit was like 78,000 per year.
I saw that too.
Yeah, like I've seen that a couple times. And, in anticipation of this episode, I looked up like the most recently dated one I could find. And what they said is basically they were going across like all these different groups, like they were labeling them as people with less money felt like they were inherently unhappy, and they found all of them felt happier up until $100,000 a year. The number's more, which makes sense because inflation and all that.
That's depressing.
I know, but I know.
It was depressing before.
I did feel when I heard that, I was like, God, that's a huge number for like literally any person to feel happier until they make that. But what this study also found, I guess, is people who had labeled themselves as unhappy, they straight up plateaued after 100,000 a year. They did not feel any happier after with more money.
Did they feel worse?
No, they just plateaued.
Wow.
People who were neutral, it significantly dropped off, but it still increased a little. And people who had already felt happy continued to feel happier with more and more money.
Wait, so you're saying if you feel neutral about money, then...
No, if you feel like neutral, like mood, like as a person, like if you go through life and are like, someone asks you like, are you happy? And you say no.
Okay, so the study is kind of showing that there's a correlation between your mood and like how happy money makes you.
Yeah, so it's saying literally everybody felt happier up until 100,000. But only people that already had labeled themselves as saying, like, I'm a pretty happy person, continued to feel happier with more money.
Okay. I mean, that makes total sense to me.
Me too.
I think money can buy happiness.
Yeah, I felt like that could be like taken a few different ways. And I was wondering, like I could see critics of it saying, oh, so it's just who you are. It's not really money. But I was like, I see that as literally a certain amount will cure unhappiness. I mean, not completely, but to a degree.
Well, when we say happy, let's unpack that. Money can pay for your rent, which you need to survive. If you can't pay your rent or if you don't know where you're going to live, it's going to be really hard to be happy. Money can buy food and medicine.
Yeah.
Money can buy transportation. I've walked everywhere when I didn't have money.
Me too.
And that also gives you more medical issues. Like being poor is so bad for you.
Well, yeah, because you have to pick and choose. Like, if something feels wrong, then it's like, okay, but is this enough to spend money on?
Being poor is really, really expensive.
Yes.
I mean, not a hot take.
No.
But
absolutely.
Yeah, I would give myself injuries walking in old shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't replace the shoes. Or you would buy cheap shoes.
Yep.
And you would just keep buying the cheap shoes because you can't. That's what I do.
Yes.
I'll go to a thrift store and buy a used pair. And then
I still buy cheap shoes because shoes are expensive.
Shoes are expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I buy secondhand most of the time for everything I can, but yeah, every now and then you'll have to make a big purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget money buying happiness.
Yeah, but my thought on those different groups is saying, like, I feel like that ultimately proves it because, sure, some people can be, like, really poor and, they're just that person that's just like, for whatever reason, I just have this super sunny outlook on life anyways, and I make the best of everything. But they're still going to get happier when they have more money and can afford basic needs.
Exactly. It's kind of ignorant to say that money can't buy happiness.
Absolutely. And we've said that a few times, which, is kind of what spurred on this whole topic.
Well, I don't know. You could say happiness itself is a luxury, but there's people in far worse situations than us who are still finding moments to be happy or to experience joy, and they don't have anything to their name.
Right. And yeah, that's what I was thinking is it's like, I know there are, really poor people out there that for whatever reason, they just have this really positive outlook, but it doesn't mean their life isn't going to feel better if suddenly they know where they're getting their next meal.
Obviously, the system is fucked up and capitalism is fucked up and all that, but we are not experts on that. We don't really know what we're talking about when it comes to money on that kind of scale. I think in the future, we can get someone who knows a little more than us to come on and kind of talk about the institutional side of it.
Yeah, that would be great.
I have someone in mind.
Shout out to someone again.
You know who you are. I'll find you. But yeah.
The only thing that I have written down that we kind of touched on, but I didn't totally get into it maybe as much as I wanted to, because I wrote to talk about the effects of growing up with financial insecurity, as I know we both did, and then suddenly having it. And that's a whole mindfuck in itself, from what I can tell.
Sometimes I've wondered if... So, when I lived in Seattle, I was making a lot more money than I ever had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was spending all of it on Uber Eats because I was really bulimic at the time. And that often happens when I have money. I go into this hardcore self-destruction spiral where I just spend it all. I referenced it earlier. Usually when I do spend a lot of money, it's when I'm having an episode or whatever. And I think part of me feels almost safer when I don't have as much money because that's what I'm used to. When you get a sudden influx of money, like you were saying, you're not used to it, especially if no one really taught you how to handle money. No one in my family or in my life ever taught me about money until I was 20 years old living with my aunt and uncle and doing my taxes for the first time.
Yeah, and that is what I found looking at it is basically those are the two reactions when that happens is that people either spend everything in the most extreme, spend well beyond their means and go into debt, or they don't spend anything, even though they could spend a lot more than they are.
Yeah, everything has to be in extremes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the maximalist design trend versus the minimalist design trend. I mean, I follow a lot of interior design. Like, I'm really into that kind of stuff, or I have been in the past. And I've noticed, like, the things that fill my feed are either maximalist or minimalist. There's no in between.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in my mind, I have to, like, live extremely frugally or live like there's no tomorrow. Like, there's no in between, which is kind of how I was raised.
That was what was kind of like, I mean, depressing in some ways. If you do grow up without money and not having much, then it's almost like you're guaranteed not to know how to handle it and not to handle it well. You're going to go to one extreme or the other. And I definitely go to the other. I mean, I told you about the property tax one, but the other example that I wrote down is, and you know, this probably relates as well to other things we've talked about. Like, I was listening to the minimization episode recently. I'm sure it weighs into that.
I feel like every episode is a minimization episode with you.
That's probably true. That should be your cut.
It's the top contender so far.
But, you know, the fact that now, I mean, I've probably mentioned this a few times, and yet I still haven't done anything about it, because at this point, it's probably been 2 years since my regular doctor left her practice, and I've never found a new one. And every time that comes up in my mind, it's like, oh, yeah, I probably should do that, but it's not pertinent for me to spend money right now.
Doctors are a luxury.
Exactly.
Health is a luxury.
Yeah. And also, it's like, I did also see my dietitian today. And at this point, I see her about once a month because, you know, we both are just kind of like, yeah, we could probably end this, but not while you have nothing else in place.
Smart.
Yeah. But I feel like even though we talk about it, then I'm really resistant to actually like look up getting a new therapist and maybe a new psychiatrist, because it's like, the initial sessions often aren't covered by insurance and you have to pay the whole thing out of pocket, and then insurance starts covering some. And I'm just like, yeah, that's a lot of money. I don't know if I need that.
Exactly. It's like, oh, grapes are $10 for a bunch, and I can spend that same $10 on like...
Yeah, then it's suddenly like, maybe I like apples better.
Well, I don't know. That was a...
No, I think it's good in that sense.
Well, no, yeah, like, because it's so much cheaper to live on junk food, or like it used to be. I feel like now even junk food is really expensive.
True, but when you were talking about how like lack of money kind of fucks up poor people as well, that was one I...
Lack of money fucks up poor people. Breaking news!
I know. How I meant to say it is, it's like, you already can't afford things, and it also makes it so that your life is worse. Like, it makes things worse for you as...
It's self-perpetuating.
Yes, yeah, so I don't know that I'm saying it better. I think my example maybe says it better, in that, yeah, you can't afford better food, so you buy cheap, shitty food, which gives you more health problems and gives you more problems in general, but it's not because you want cheap, shitty food. It's because it's literally all you can afford.
Yeah, or maybe you can't afford therapy or doctors or anything like that, and so you use like substances or eating disorders just to like survive.
Mm-hmm.
But then the substance or the eating disorder ends up costing more than you bargained for.
Gets so out of control that it's like, well, now you need some very expensive treatment for it.
Yes. And then you can't pay for treatment, or you go into debt, which makes you use more coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't lived this life multiple
we don't
times.
know anything about this.
It really sucks. I'm in a relatively comfortable place right now. Knock on wood.
Right.
Who knows what the future will hold. But money remains to be a very contentious thing. And not just for us, like everyone I know.
Mm-hmm.
Even my parents. And they make a lot more money than I do now.
Yeah, and that's something too. Like, again, like I said near the top, I am probably financially in the best spot I've ever been in my life. And even if I lost my job today, I would be fine for probably a year or more. But because I'm so used to it, it feels to me that it's like, but the bottom can drop out from you at any moment.
Yeah. I really hate that it took losing my job and draining my 401k to like become eligible for Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I never worry about medical bills because I have Medicaid, but I got Medicaid because I lost my job, or,
Yeah, that sucks too, because that is what it takes. Because I remember being like really fucking poor and applying for Medicaid once, and I got denied.
Yeah.
And that's because,
Yeah.
I probably like had like the shittiest job that was making half the money to pay my bills, but they were like, that's enough. You don't qualify.
Yeah, and I live in fear of getting it taken away if I make like $1 over what I'm supposed to make.
Right.
I mean, towards the beginning, you said something about pride. I think you were talking about that in relation to your parents.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to end without touching on that because I feel like that also has a lot to do with mental health.
Yeah.
Like growing up around people who had more money than I did, I spent a lot of time acting like I also had money. Like,
oh, yeah, me too.
I mean, it became really important that they not know that I didn't have money and that I never asked for anything that could arouse suspicion. I don't know. My parents were also pretty proud. Like they never, well, I don't know. They got a lot of help from the church over the years, but they never asked.
But I feel like, yeah, that doesn't feel like the same thing. Like, to me, that feels similar to knowing, like, if my family was really, really hurting, then they probably would have, like, turned to other family members. And I feel like your family would have seen, like, the church as a similar sort of outlet. Like, it's not the same as saying, like, I need to apply to the government, which, I mean, I know from comments you've made that they did, but I imagine that was harder than saying, like, the church is there to help us out.
Well, yeah, I mean, they don't even like to talk about that time in their lives when they went bankrupt, for obvious reasons. It's a taboo in this country. Like,
yeah, like people are going to instantly have judgments, I feel like.
Exactly. They don't even like to talk about it now, even though they have money now. It's this deep shame. And I feel like I used to feel like that more, but honestly, I think the moment that I started like stripping that away was when I made the GoFundMe to go to treatment.
Yeah.
Because that was like really, really hard to do.
Oh, I can imagine. Because I've considered it before, but I never did it.
Yeah. I mean, you really have to...
basically, like you said, you kind of just have to like stand there naked and be like, this is me.
Swallow your pride.
Yes.
That's the phrase I was thinking of. You have to swallow your pride.
Mm-hmm.
But then you realize that like you shouldn't have been proud in the first place because like...
I know, when people come out and actually help you, then I know it feels like it's a shock, but it's like, oh, maybe it's not as terrible of a thing as I was building it up in my head.
Yeah.
But it's still hard.
It's really hard. I think money is one of the big contributors to my stress and to my trauma. And I don't talk about it a lot because it is unpleasant.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm really curious to hear what listeners think about this topic.
I know. I was just thinking about it, and really I'd like to leave it pretty open. I would just love to know, how has money affected your mental health? Like whether you've had it, whether you didn't.
Totally.
Yes.
I just know we're going to get good answers for this one.
Oh, I know. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and maybe we can even go over them with a special guest.
Maybe.
Again, you know who
you are.
But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about money.
Yeah, we've hit everything I wanted to. But I did want to devote a whole episode to it because we kept teasing that.
I still feel like I didn't do it justice.
I know. I feel like I will have so much more to say, but I guess that's good why we now put a related poll out.
Yeah, to be continued, y'all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone go out and get that bread.
Yeah, and maybe don't feel afraid to spend some money on yourself for something nice.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. And it's also okay if you can't afford it.
Yeah.
See ya, pores.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard, tell a friend about the podcast. You can direct them to picklesandvodka.substack.com, where you can find our entire back catalog and links to all our social media. We love hearing from our listeners, so send us a voice message at speakpipe.com/picklesandvodka or DM us at Pickles and Vodka Podcast on Instagram. My personal account is at XtinaJumper, and Lauren is at Lauren3_AFH. We'll see you next week.